The emergency beacon screamed across subspace frequencies, reaching Earth's military command in less than 3 minutes. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the war room, her face pale as the transmission played for the third time. The voice belonged to Dr. Marcus Webb, one of humanity's top xenobiologists, currently stationed on Research Outpost Kepler 442b. This is Dr. Webb from Kepler Station. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They have taken civilian hostages, including children from the education pod. The aliens are demanding Earth's immediate surrender of all military assets and colonial territories. They claim to have similar operations happening across 12 human colonies. They want a response within 72 hours, or they will begin executing hostages every 6 hours. The aliens call themselves the hegemony. They say humans are too dangerous to be allowed free expansion. Please, Earth Command, they have my daughter here. They have everyone's families. The transmission ended with the sound of plasma fire and screaming. Admiral Chun turned to her staff. Colonel Martinez, her tactical advisor, was already pulling up star charts. Ma'am, we've lost contact with 8 other colonies in the past hour. Long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements in all those sectors. How many hostages are we talking about? Chun asked, her voice steady despite the storm building in her chest. Conservative estimate? About 15,000 civilians across all capture facilities. Men, women, children, elderly. The hegemony seems to have targeted our most vulnerable population centers first. Captain Rodriguez from Intelligence stepped forward. Admiral, we're detecting a massive fleet moving toward our core systems. This isn't just about hostages. They're using them as shields while they position for a full invasion. Chun studied the tactical display. Red dots marked enemy positions across human space. Each dot represented thousands of alien warships, and beneath each fleet were human colonies full of innocent people. The hegemony had played their hand perfectly. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their willingness to fight for each other, to never leave anyone behind. Now that same strength was being used against them. Ma'am, Colonel Martinez said quietly, the Joint Chiefs are requesting immediate conference. They want to discuss surrender terms. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what surrender meant. Humanity would become a slave race, their expansion halted, their freedom gone forever. But the alternative meant writing off 15,000 innocent lives. Give me President Walsh, Chun ordered, and patch me through to Fleet Admiral Thompson. Tell him to prepare the entire home fleet for deployment. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez interrupted. The hegemony fleet outnumbers us 50 to 1. Even our entire combined military couldn't take them in a straight fight. Chun turned to face her officers. Her eyes held a hardness that made veteran soldiers step back. Did you think I was planning a straight fight, Captain? The hegemony made one crucial mistake. They think they understand humans. They think they can predict our response because they've studied our military tactics and our history of protecting civilians. She walked to the main display, pointing at the alien fleet positions. But they don't understand what happens when you threaten our children. They don't know about the depths we'll go to, the prices we'll pay, the lines we'll cross when someone hurts our families. Colonel Martinez frowned. What are you planning, ma'am? Something the hegemony won't expect, because their species would never do it themselves. We're going to save every single hostage, destroy their entire invasion fleet, and make sure they never threaten humanity again. Chen's voice carried a cold certainty that sent chills through the room. And we're going to do it in a way that will become legend across the galaxy. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to every human military unit, every colonial defense force, every militia group, and every civilian volunteer organization. Use the emergency broadcast network. I want every human in space to hear this. The officer's hands moved quickly across his console. Channel open, Admiral. Chun stepped forward to the microphone, her voice carrying across human space to millions of people on hundreds of worlds. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command. The hegemony believes they can break our spirit by threatening our most precious treasures, our children, our families, our future. They think we will surrender rather than risk harm to innocents. She paused, letting her words sink in across the void. They are wrong. We are human. We do not abandon our own. We do not bow to threats. And when someone hurts our children, we become something these aliens cannot understand. We become unstoppable. The transmission continued to echo across space as Admiral Chun began implementing a plan so audacious, so completely outside normal military doctrine, that only humans would be crazy enough to attempt it. The hegemony had made their move, but they had no idea what they had just awakened. In the depths of space, human fleets began moving with purpose that defied all conventional wisdom. The hostages would be saved. The hegemony would learn why humans were considered the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And the universe would witness something that would be talked about for 1,000 years. The game had begun, but the hegemony didn't yet realize they were the ones about to lose everything. Commander Zethkar of the hegemony watched the human fleet movements with growing confusion. His tactical display showed something impossible. Instead of massing their forces for either an attack or defensive positions around Earth, the humans were scattering. Ships were breaking off in small groups, heading toward distant sectors that had no strategic value. Analysis, he demanded from his intelligence officer. Unknown, Commander. Human vessels are dispersing across 17 different vectors. Some groups contain only 3 or 4 ships. It makes no tactical sense. They're abandoning any chance of mounting an effective defense. Zitker's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The humans are breaking. Their emotional weakness overwhelms their military training. They cannot accept the loss of their hostages, so they fragment their response. This confirms our intelligence about their species. His communication officer interrupted. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from a human Admiral Chun. Display it. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen, standing in what looked like the bridge of a military vessel. Behind her, human officers moved with calm precision. Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Third Fleet, I assume you're monitoring our communications. The alien commander straightened. How did she know his name and position? I am. Are you prepared to discuss surrender terms, human? No, Chen replied simply. I'm calling to give you a warning. You have 6 hours to release all hostages and withdraw from human space. This is your only chance to avoid what's coming. Zethkar's laugh was a harsh chittering sound. You threaten me while your fleets scatter like frightened insects? While I hold 15,000 of your offspring as shields. Your species' emotional dysfunction amazes me. You misunderstand our movements, Commander. We're not scattering in panic. We're getting into position. Position for what? Your largest fleet group contains only 40 vessels. My single fleet numbers 800 ships. Your scattered forces cannot threaten us. Chen's smile was cold and predatory. Commander, you made an assumption about human nature that's about to cost you everything. You assumed we'd choose between saving the hostages and protecting our worlds. You thought we'd have to pick one or the other. Because you cannot do both. No species can mount an effective rescue operation while simultaneously defending against overwhelming force. Basic military doctrine. Human military doctrine is different. We don't choose between saving our people and destroying our enemies. We do both. Zethkar felt his first stirring of unease. Impossible. Your scattered formations cannot coordinate effectively across such distances. Watch and learn. The transmission ended. Zethkar immediately turned to his sensor operator. Report on human fleet positions. Commander, this is strange. The human ships have taken positions around every major industrial asteroid, mining station, and orbital facility in 17 different systems. Not military targets, sir. Economic infrastructure. They plan to hold hostages of their own. Negative, sir. They're not occupying the facilities. They're setting charges. Zethkar's blood went cold. Charges? Yes, sir. Massive mining explosives. They're turning every asteroid mining operation, every orbital refinery, every space-based industrial complex into a weapon. Another officer called out urgently. Commander, long-range sensors detect human civilian vessels moving toward our rear positions. Thousands of them. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even personal craft. They're not armed, but they're carrying massive energy signatures. Zethkar's mind raced. What are the humans doing? His answer came as the first detonations lit up the void. An asteroid mining station in the Proxima system exploded with the force of a small star. The explosion sent a shower of metallic debris racing through space, at incredible velocities. Similar explosions erupted across 17 systems simultaneously. "Sir," the sensor officer shouted over the alarms. "The debris patterns, they're calculated. The humans have turned their entire industrial infrastructure into massive kinetic projectile arrays." On a tactical display, millions of metal fragments began their journey through space. Each piece had been precisely positioned and accelerated by the industrial explosions. They were traveling on trajectories that would bring them to the exact locations where hegemony fleets had stationed themselves. "Time to impact." 12 hours, sir." But that's not the worst part. The civilian ships, they're not carrying weapons. They're carrying fuel and industrial materials. They're planning to ram our formations. Zethkar stared at the display in horror. They're going to sacrifice their entire industrial base and civilian fleet? "It appears so, sir. But, Commander, the trajectories, they're not just random. Every calculation has been made to avoid hitting the facilities where our hostages are held. Somehow, they've managed to create a galaxy-spanning kinetic bombardment that will destroy our fleets while leaving the hostage sites completely untouched. Impossible. The computational power required, the precision. No species could coordinate such a massive operation across interstellar distances." His communication officer spoke up quietly. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of transmissions from human civilian vessels. They're all volunteers. They're saying goodbye to their families." Zethkar listened to the transmissions in growing horror. Ordinary humans, civilians who had never served in the military, calmly discussing their decision to ram hegemony warships. Parents explaining to their children why they had to sacrifice themselves. Children promising to take care of younger siblings. All of it delivered with the same calm determination he'd heard in Admiral Chen's voice. "Sir," his tactical officer said, voice shaking, "preliminary analysis suggests their plan will work. The coordinated kinetic strikes will cripple 80% of our fleet strength. The civilian ram attacks will finish off most command ships. And somehow, they've managed to do all of this while ensuring minimal risk to their hostages." Zethkar felt something he'd never experienced before. Genuine terror at the tactical capabilities of another species. The humans hadn't chosen between saving their people and destroying their enemies. They'd found a way to do both, and they were willing to pay any price to make it happen. "Give me Admiral Chun," he ordered, his voice barely steady. The transmission connected immediately, as if she'd been waiting for his call. "Yes, Commander." "How?" was all he could manage to say. "How what, Commander? How can your species coordinate such an operation? How could civilians willingly sacrifice themselves? How can you calculate trajectories across 17 systems while ensuring hostage safety?" Chen's expression was patient, almost pitying. "Because, Commander, you made another assumption about humans. You thought individual survival was our highest priority. You don't understand that humans will die for their children, their families, their species. You don't understand that we've spent our entire history learning to work together, to sacrifice for each other, to find solutions others think are impossible. This is madness." "No, Commander. This is humanity." The debris clouds were still 11 hours away from impact, but Zethkar could already see his defeat written in the stars. The humans had turned their weakness into strength, their compassion into a weapon, their willingness to sacrifice into an unstoppable force. And they were just getting started. Dr. Marcus Webb crouched in the shadows of the detention facility on Kepler, 442b, his heart pounding as he watched the hegemony guards. The aliens had grown increasingly agitated over the past few hours, constantly checking their communication devices and speaking in urgent, chittering voices. Something was happening that they hadn't expected. Webb's 8-year-old daughter Emma sat beside him, her small hand gripping his tightly. Around them, nearly 200 human civilians waited in the cramped holding area. The youngest was only 3 years old. The oldest was Dr. Patricia Santos, the colony's chief medical officer at 72. "Daddy," Emma whispered, "why are the bug people so scared?" Webb glanced at the hegemony guards. She was right, they were scared. The tall, insectoid aliens who had seemed so confident when they first attacked were now moving with jerky, nervous energy. "I don't know, sweetheart, but maybe help is coming." One of the guards approached their group, its translator device crackling. "Humans." Your species has chosen to sacrifice industrial assets rather than surrender. This changes nothing. You will remain here until your leaders see reason. Dr. Santos stood up slowly, her white hair catching the harsh facility lighting. What's happening out there? The guard's mandibles clicked in agitation. Your military is destroying your own infrastructure. Wasteful. Emotional. This is why your species needs hegemony guidance. Or maybe, Santos said calmly, you don't understand us as well as you think. The guard raised its weapon, but before it could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. The guards immediately began talking rapidly into their communication devices. Webb strained to hear their conversation, but their language was just alien chittering to his ears. However, their body language was clear. Something was very, very wrong. Commander Zethkar's voice echoed through the facility's communication system, speaking in heavily accented English. Attention, human prisoners. Your fleet actions have been noted. However, you underestimate hegemony resolve. To demonstrate our seriousness, we will begin executing hostages in 1 hour, starting with the youngest. Emma's grip tightened on Webb's hand. Around them, parents instinctively pulled their children closer. The fear in the room was thick enough to taste. But then, something unexpected happened. Old Dr. Santos began to laugh. Santos, Webb hissed. What's wrong with you? She shook her head, still chuckling. Marcus, I've been studying alien psychology for 40 years. I know panic when I see it, regardless of species. These guards aren't confident anymore. They're terrified. She raised her voice so everyone in the detention area could hear her. Listen to me, everyone. I want you to pay attention to our captors. Really look at them. Webb studied the guards more carefully. Santos was right. The aliens were constantly checking their weapons, their communication devices, their sensors. They were positioning themselves near escape routes. Their movements had become erratic and defensive. They're scared, Webb realized. Exactly. And do you know what that means? Santos asked, her voice carrying clearly through the detention area. It means Earth didn't abandon us. It means our people found a way to fight back that these aliens never expected. One of the guards approached Santos, weapon raised. Silence, human. Santos looked up at the towering alien without flinching. You know what I think? I think your commander Zethkar just realized he picked a fight with the wrong species. The alien raised its weapon to strike her, but stopped as more alarms began blaring. A different voice came over the communication system, speaking in the harsh hegemony language. Whatever it was saying made every guard in the facility freeze. Webb didn't need to understand the words. The terror in the alien voices was universal. Attention, all hegemony forces. Admiral Chen's voice suddenly cut through the facility's speakers. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command. Your fleets are about to be destroyed. You have 15 minutes to evacuate all personnel to minimum safe distance from human hostage sites. This is not a negotiation. One of the guards screamed something into its communicator, then turned to another guard. They began arguing in their alien language, but their gestures were clear. They were debating whether to flee. Dr. Santos stood up again. I've got a PhD in xenopsychology, she announced to the room. And I can tell you exactly what's happening out there. Humanity just did something so completely outside their understanding of military doctrine that their entire invasion plan has collapsed. Emma tugged on her father's shirt. Daddy, what's xenopsychology? It's the study of how alien minds work, sweetheart. Like knowing that these bug people are scared because they don't understand how humans think. Webb stared at his daughter, amazed. Exactly like that. The guards were now in full argument, their weapons wavering between pointing at the hostages and at the facility exits. More alien voices were shouting over their communication system, each one sounding more panicked than the last. 10 minutes, Admiral Chen's voice announced. Suddenly, the facility shuddered. Emergency lights flickered as something massive moved overhead. Through the small windows, Webb could see hegemony ships launching from the surface, fleeing toward orbit. They're running, someone whispered. No, Santos corrected. They're evacuating their own people before Earth finishes whatever they started. The facility shuddered again, and this time Webb could hear it, a deep, resonant humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was growing louder. One of the guards finally broke, running toward the exit while screaming into its communicator. The others looked at each other, then at the hostages, then at the exits. The conflict was clear on their alien faces. Orders said to guard the prisoners, but survival instinct said to run. 5 minutes, Admiral Chun announced. The humming was now so loud that conversation was becoming difficult. Whatever was coming, it was massive, and it was close. Webb pulled Emma closer. I don't know what's about to happen, sweetheart, but I think we're about to be rescued. The remaining guards made their decision. They all ran for the exits simultaneously, abandoning their posts, and their prisoners in their panic to escape whatever was coming. Dr. Santos walked over to the facility controls and began examining them. Well, would you look at that? They left the doors unlocked in their hurry to evacuate. As the detention field deactivated and the facility doors slid open, Webb realized something profound. The hegemony had been so terrified by whatever humanity had planned that they'd abandoned their most valuable assets, the hostages, without even trying to use them as shields. What could scare them that badly, he wondered aloud. Santos smiled as she helped coordinate the evacuation of civilians from the facility. Something that could only come from human minds. Marcus. Something so audacious, so completely outside normal military thinking, that an alien species who's conquered half the galaxy couldn't even comprehend it, let alone counter it. The humming was now a roar that shook the ground beneath their feet. Through the facility windows, Webb could see lights in the sky. Massive, impossibly bright lights that were growing larger by the second. Daddy, Emma said, pointing at the sky, those don't look like spaceships. Webb looked up, and his jaw dropped. She was right. They weren't spaceships at all. They were asteroids. Hundreds of them, but moving in perfect formation, each one glowing with controlled fusion engines. They weren't falling toward the planet. They were parking in orbit around it, creating a protective shell that no hegemony ship would dare approach. My God, Webb whispered. They didn't just rescue us. They fortified the entire planet. As the last of the human hostages evacuated the facility, Webb realized that Earth hadn't just saved them. They'd sent a message to the galaxy. Hurt our people, and we'll turn the very stones of space into shields to protect them. The rescue was just beginning. The bridge of the hegemony flagship Eternal Conquest was chaos. Commander Zethkar watched his tactical displays with growing horror as the human plan unfolded in all its terrible brilliance. What had seemed like scattered, panicked movements were revealing themselves to be the most coordinated military operation in galactic history. Status report, he demanded. Sir, the kinetic debris from the human industrial explosions will reach our fleet positions in 47 minutes. Preliminary analysis shows 93% of our ships are in projected impact zones. Can we evade? Negative, sir. The debris fields cover too wide an area. If we move to avoid them, we enter the approach vectors of the human civilian vessels. And, sir, there are thousands of them. Zethkar studied the sensor readings in disbelief. Every human civilian ship was broadcasting a message. Not demands, not threats, farewells. Goodbye messages to families, last words to children, final declarations of love. Each ship contained ordinary humans who had volunteered to ram hegemony warships. How many civilian vessels are approaching our positions? 12,743, sir. All on collision courses with our capital ships. Projected impact sequence begins in 93 minutes. Sir, another officer called out. Priority transmission from the 4th Fleet. They're reporting massive energy signatures approaching their position. It's not debris, sir. It's asteroids. Hundreds of them, equipped with fusion engines and guidance systems. Zethkar felt his stomach drop. The humans weaponized asteroids? Not weaponized, sir. The asteroids are taking protective positions around every hostage site. They're creating impenetrable defensive shells. Any ship that approaches will be crushed by gravitational forces or incinerated by the fusion drives. The scope of the human operation was becoming clear, and it defied everything the hegemony knew about warfare. The humans had simultaneously mounted a galaxy-spanning offensive while creating perfect defenses for their hostages. They turned their own civilians into weapons while protecting their most vulnerable people. Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Chan appeared on the main screen, but she wasn't on a ship's bridge anymore. She was standing in what appeared to be a massive command center with hundreds of tactical displays showing the entire theater of operations. Commander Zethkar, you have 37 minutes before the kinetic strikes begin. I'm offering you one final chance to surrender. Surrender? Zethkar's voice cracked. Your tactics are madness. You're sacrificing entire star systems' worth of infrastructure. Your civilian casualties will be in the millions. No, Commander. Our civilian casualties will be zero. Impossible. You're using civilian ships as weapons. Chen's expression remained calm. Every ship in our civilian fleet is operating under remote control. Our people evacuated to the asteroid defense platforms 6 hours ago. Zethkar stared at her. Remote control? You're using unmanned vessels, automated vessels loaded with industrial materials, and set on collision courses with your ships. The farewell messages you've been intercepting aren't from the ship's crews. They're from the people who built those ships, who loaded them, who programmed them. Messages to their families before they committed their life's work to protecting human children. The alien commander felt reality shifting around him. Then the emotional trauma, the sacrifice, was exactly what we wanted you to see. You studied human psychology, but you missed the most important part. We're excellent actors when our children's lives are at stake. Zethkar looked at his tactical displays with new understanding. The humans hadn't scattered in panic. They'd executed the most complex military deception in galactic history. They'd made the hegemony believe in human emotional weakness while positioning assets for the most devastating first strike ever attempted. Sir, his communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving surrender signals from the 9th and 12th fleets. They're requesting immediate evacuation coordinates. What? Why are they surrendering? Sir, their commanders have done the mathematical projections. When the kinetic strikes hit, the debris will create a cascade effect. Destroyed ships will become additional projectiles. The collision zones will become death traps that no ship can survive. Chen's voice cut through the bridge chatter. Commander, your subordinates understand what you're still trying to deny. This isn't a battle you can win through superior numbers or firepower. This is a demonstration of what happens when you threaten human families. But the cost to your species will be exactly what we're willing to pay. Do you know what we call the industrial assets we destroyed, Commander? Tools. Do you know what we call the automated ships we're sending against you? Hammers. When someone threatens our children, we break our tools and throw our hammers. We can build more tools and hammers. We cannot replace our children. Zethkar looked around his bridge at his own officers. Their faces showed the same realization that was growing in his mind. They had fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, long-range sensors are detecting additional human fleet movements. Large formations moving toward our supply lines and reinforcement routes. How large? Unknown, sir. The formations are using some kind of stealth technology we can't penetrate. But the gravitational distortions suggest hundreds of capital ships. Chen's image smiled. Those would be our actual military fleets, Commander. The ones you never saw coming because you were focused on our decoy operations. Decoy operations? Everything you've witnessed so far, the industrial explosions, the civilian vessels, the asteroid deployments, those weren't our primary military response. Those were our rescue and defensive operations. Our actual attack fleets have been moving into position while you were distracted by our hostage recovery efforts. The full scope of the human strategy hit Zethkar like a physical blow. While the hegemony was focused on the spectacular debris clouds and civilian ram attacks, the human military had been quietly surrounding them. The kinetic strikes weren't meant to destroy the hegemony fleet. They were meant to disable them, so the human military could capture them intact. Sir, the 3rd, 7th, and 11th fleets are requesting immediate surrender protocols. Their commanders are reporting human warships decloaking all around their positions. Chen leaned forward slightly. Commander, you have 15 minutes to order a general surrender. After that, my military commanders will assume you've chosen to fight to the death, and they will accommodate that choice. And if we surrender, your ships will be impounded, your crews will be treated according to interstellar law, and you will be returned to hegemony space with a message for your leaders. What message? Chen's smile was no longer kind. That humanity is willing to destroy star systems and sacrifice everything they've built to protect a single human child. Ask your leaders if they want to test what we'll do to protect our entire species. Zethkar looked at his tactical displays one final time. Red markers showed kinetic debris approaching from 17 different vectors. Blue markers showed thousands of automated vessels on collision courses. Green markers showed human military fleets that had appeared from nowhere to surround every hegemony formation. The humans hadn't just outfought them. They'd outthought them so completely that the hegemony's entire invasion plan had become irrelevant. "Open a channel to all hegemony forces," he said quietly. "Channel open, sir. All ships, this is Commander Zethkar. Implement surrender protocol immediately. Stand down all weapons and prepare to be boarded." He turned back to Admiral Chen's image. "Your species terrifies me, Admiral." "Good," she replied. "Remember that feeling, and make sure your leaders understand it too." The greatest military force in the galaxy had just surrendered to a species they'd thought they could control through hostages. The universe was about to learn a new lesson about humanity. They didn't just protect their own, they redefined the very concept of protection. 3 months after the surrender, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 species had gathered for an emergency session, and the topic was humanity. The hegemony delegation sat in the accused section, their insectoid forms hunched in what could only be described as shame. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth stood at the central podium, her presentation displaying tactical recordings from the Kepler incident, as it had come to be known. Around her, alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the human operation unfolded on the massive screens. "The question before this council," Ambassador Vasquez said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "is not whether the hegemony acted illegally by taking civilian hostages. That has been established. The question is whether humanity's response was proportional." High Counselor Vexith of the Altarian Confederation leaned forward. His crystalline features caught the chamber lights as he spoke. "Ambassador, your species destroyed industrial infrastructure worth approximately 400 billion credits. Your automated ram attacks eliminated 837 hegemony vessels. The scope of your retaliation was unprecedented. With respect, Counselor, you're missing the point." Vasquez gestured to the tactical display, which showed the moment hegemony forces abandoned the hostage facilities. "Our operation achieved its primary objective without a single human civilian casualty. Every hostage was recovered alive and unharmed." Representative Korth of the hegemony rose slowly. His voice carried the weight of defeat. "The human response was beyond our ability to counter. We had studied their species for decades. We understood their military capabilities, their technology, their tactical preferences. But we did not understand their strategic thinking." "Explain," prompted High Counselor Ysera of the Serpentine Alliance. Korth's mandibles clicked nervously. When most species face a hostage situation, they must choose between tactical options: save the hostages or protect their territories, negotiate or attack, preserve resources or spend them. Humans refused to choose. They created a third option that achieved everything simultaneously. Ambassador Vasquez nodded. The hegemony made a fundamental error in their assessment of human psychology. They assumed our emotional attachment to our children was a weakness to be exploited. They discovered it was our greatest strength. "But the cost," insisted Counselor Vexith. "Your species sacrificed entire industrial complexes." "We sacrificed tools," Vasquez corrected. "Replaceable tools. In exchange, we demonstrated to the galaxy that threatening human civilians carries consequences no aggressor can accept." Representative Zoltar of the Void Hunters, a species known for their own military prowess, spoke from his delegation section. "Your tactical coordination across interstellar distances was impressive. How did you achieve such precise timing without alerting enemy sensors?" Vasquez smiled. "That's classified, Representative. But I can tell you that the operation required the cooperation of every human in space. Military personnel, civilians, children, elderly. Everyone contributed according to their abilities." "Even the children?" asked Counselor Ysera, her serpentine form coiling with interest. "Especially the children. Human children have an excellent understanding of games, puzzles, and problem-solving. They calculated many of the trajectory solutions that made the kinetic strikes possible." A shocked murmur ran through the chamber. The idea of involving offspring in military planning was alien to most species. High Counselor Vexith studied his notes. The hegemony reports that human civilian vessels broadcast farewell messages during their approach. Yet you claim these ships were unmanned. The messages were real, Vasquez confirmed. They came from the humans who built those ships, who loaded them with supplies, who programmed their final missions. When you threaten our children, every human becomes part of the war effort. The shipbuilders, the cargo loaders, the navigation programmers, they all understood their vessels were going to be destroyed, and they wanted their families to know why. Representative Korth spoke again, his voice heavy. We captured what we thought were military communications during the operation. Analysis now shows they were children's voices, coordinating mathematical calculations. Your offspring were directing military assets. Our children were protecting each other, Vasquez corrected. Human young have a strong instinct to defend their siblings and friends. When you threaten them, they responded by outthinking your entire military command structure. Counselor Wisisura's eyes widened. You allowed children to participate in combat operations. We allowed children to be themselves, problem solvers, protectors, family members. Your psychological profiles of humanity missed something crucial. We're not just individuals who care about each other. We're a collective intelligence that becomes more capable when we're protecting our young. Representative Zoltar leaned forward with obvious interest. The automated ships that struck our vessels, they were controlled by civilian artificial intelligences? No, Vasquez said, her smile growing broader. They were controlled by human teenagers playing what they thought was a simulation game. We told them they were helping to create a training scenario. They developed the optimal attack patterns in 3 hours. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The most devastating space battle in recent galactic history had been planned by human children who thought they were playing a game. High Counselor Vexith finally spoke. Ambassador, this council finds itself in an unusual position. The hegemony clearly violated interstellar law by taking civilian hostages. But your response has fundamentally altered our understanding of human capabilities. In what way, Counselor? Every military intelligence service in the galaxy classified humanity as a mid-level threat, dangerous in direct combat, but limited by emotional decision-making and resource constraints. Your operation at Kepler has required us to completely revise those assessments. Representative Korth added quietly, our strategists now believe humanity may be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not despite their emotional nature, but because of it. Ambassador Vasquez looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Counselors, humanity didn't develop our capabilities to threaten other species. We developed them to protect our own. But anyone who threatens human families should understand what they're facing. Which is, asked Counselor Wisisura, a species that will sacrifice star systems to save a single child. A people who turn their civilians into soldiers and their children into strategists when their families are threatened. A collective intelligence that becomes more powerful the more you try to hurt what we love. High Counselor Vexith consulted with his fellow counselors before speaking. This council hereby establishes the Kepler protocols. Any military action against human civilian populations will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council itself. And, added Counselor Wisisura, we hereby classify humanity as a level alpha strategic threat to be treated with the highest diplomatic respect. Representative Korth rose one final time. The hegemony formally requests that the Kepler recordings be distributed to all species as an educational resource. Future generations should understand what humans are capable of when their young are threatened. As the council session concluded and representatives began filing out, small groups clustered together, speaking in hushed tones about the humans who had turned a hostage crisis into a demonstration of power that had reshaped galactic politics. Ambassador Vasquez gathered her materials, knowing that the message had been delivered clearly. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. Not because they were naturally aggressive, but because their love for their children could move mountains, redirect asteroids, and coordinate impossible military operations across interstellar distances. The galaxy now understood that humans were not just another spacefaring species. They were parents, siblings, and children who happened to travel between stars. And When someone threatened their families, they became something that no military force in the galaxy could withstand. They became unstoppable. 3 months after the hegemony learned this lesson, the rest of the galaxy had taken note. Human space was now surrounded by a buffer of neutral systems whose governments had volunteered to serve as early warning networks. Not because they feared human aggression, but because they wanted to make sure no one was foolish enough to test human protective instincts again. The universe had learned that when you use hostages against humans, you don't get what you want. You discover what humans are truly capable of when they stop thinking like individuals and start thinking like a family. And that, as the hegemony could attest, was a lesson no species ever forgot.